Every so often, you meet someone and instantly feel a deep, unspoken connection. It's difficult to explain, almost as if you've known them far longer than you actually have. My guest today is one of those rare people. She brings both a powerful story and meaningful insight. Before we get started, you might notice that my guest's voice is a little different. In many ways, that's what makes this conversation so meaningful. She spent a long time finding her voice in every sense of the word. I'm really glad she's here, and it's a fantastic conversation, so let's dive in. Hello and welcome to this episode of A Gift for Grief, a space where we explore the many shapes of grief and the unexpected ways it can guide us. When we think of grief, we often associate it with the loss of someone we love, but grief can also arise from the loss of our health, our identity, and that life we imagined for ourselves. Today's guest understands that kind of grief deeply. She joins us to share her healing journey through stage 4 endometriosis, a journey that offers hope to the millions of women living with this often debilitating condition. I'm joined by Wenke Langhof, author of From Endo War to Inner Peace. Wenke speaks about her experience with stage 4 endometriosis, not only as a physical illness, but as something that profoundly reshaped her relationship with her body, her sense of self, and her understanding of healing. In this conversation, we explore the often unseen grief that comes with chronic illness, what it means to feel disconnected from your own body, and how that relationship can begin to shift and soften over time. So Wenke, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, you're such an interesting lady, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. Now, you describe yourself as a healing mentor, a health and life coach, and you work with personal and spiritual growth and soul alignment. You do so many things. So for people who don't know you, could you share a little bit about yourself and explain what it is you do?
I suppose inspired by my own healing journey of healing naturally from stage 4 endometriosis, after I'd healed myself, I felt I'd learned so much on my journey that I felt would be beneficial to other women or anyone really tackling chronic illness, I suppose, in these days. But a lot of my clients today are women. So I went on after healing myself to retrain as a health and life coach. So I could train in the German protocol, the Budwig protocol, which is a cancer protocol used in Germany, and to be able to train in that. And that is the protocol that helped me heal from stage 4 endometriosis. To be able to do that, I needed to be a therapist, which I wasn't at the time. I was a business German tutor, so had no background in any health-related profession. I'd also experienced Reiki, shamanic healing, and various other things that had helped me on my healing journey, and started exploring all of those and trained in all those modalities. So I'm a shamanic practitioner today. I'm a Reiki master, so I teach Reiki to people, as well as using it as like offering treatments. I came across emotional freedom technique as part of my training and trained in that later on, which then led me to something called matrix reimprinting, which uses emotional freedom technique, or EFT, to connect to the subconscious and look at all those subconscious belief patterns that we all run, all of us, that keep us from living our truest, most authentic self. And I think on our journey to health and healing, we have to find out again who we truly are and where or how we are not expressing that in our life. And it's often our body shows us the way through illnesses. So to me, the way I look at it today, and this wasn't the way I looked at it when I first had endometriosis, but today I'm convinced, inspired by my own journey and by all the people I've worked with since, that an illness is always the body talking to us and saying, you're running some subconscious beliefs where you're not fully expressing your true self in this world. And the body is almost just giving us a hint. And when you know what to look for and you know what the hints are, it's quite easy to correct them.
Yeah. Now, you're also an author and you write about all this in your book. You share your journey. And I listened to your book on Audible and I was absolutely hooked. I describe it as like a personal memoir and like a self-help book at the same time. Can you tell us a bit about the book and why you chose to write it?
So I'd healed myself. I'd then retrained as a health and life coach, retrained, in all the modalities that I use today, and started treating people. So I, for a few years, ran 12-week programs specifically for endometriosis and cancer patients. And what I found, I suppose, was that my time is limited. It's quite intense when you're working with someone at a deeply emotional level. Yeah. So I would only treat 1 or 2 patients a day. So I would not have more than 8 patients at any time in a 12-week program. But there are millions of women out there suffering from endometriosis. I mean, they expect, it's estimated that 1 in 10 women suffer from endometriosis. And I just felt like I needed a bigger platform to reach more people. Yeah. And it wasn't about, my motivation has never been to earn money as such. I want to be here and help people and share my story to inspire other women who are being told by the medical system that endometriosis is an incurable disease that you have to just live with. And the pain is absolutely horrendous. And I had healed myself within 18 months. So to me, that was a message worth sharing and reaching. I was hoping that the book would help me reach more women. It would help me get on podcasts like this and talk about the issue more and tell people that it's possible. I think more than anything, we need hope in today's world. Because I think the way the medical system just says, no, you can't heal.
Yeah.
I totally believe our beliefs are the most powerful thing. And if we believe we can do something, we can. And the beliefs are what creates your reality. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Bruce Lipton. If people haven't come across him yet, do look him up on YouTube or online. He does so much all around the power of belief. Yeah. Lynn McTaggart with, her work. Joe Dispenza. I mean, they're all people who have certainly inspired me on my journey and helped me on my journey. And if nothing else, I would love the book and the podcasts and the various things I've been doing. I've got a YouTube channel to give hope to the women again. Yeah. And to anyone suffering from any illness, really. I mean, mine was endometriosis and I've got papillomas on my vocal cords, which are healing at the moment. So me finding my voice, so that was another aspect of writing the book, was very much almost a therapeutic exercise for me to write it all down, to let go of the pain and the suffering that endometriosis had brought me, and to process that emotional journey and my own soul journey through the bringing it down on paper or on a computer screen that then found its way onto paper. Yes. So writing that book, was on the one hand giving hope to women and sharing the story and reaching a wider audience. And it's certainly, I think, like any book anyone writes, it was a healing journey in itself, in the actual writing for me as well, in terms of finding my voice and saying, as a woman, I have a voice and I'm ready to speak my truth, even if that triggers or challenges beliefs in the wider world that we might have as society.
I love that. Now, endometriosis is something that takes a long time to get diagnosed, isn't it? People can go for years and they can get, I think a lot of it is to do because it's women's health.
Absolutely. And I think we're getting better at it. So there is much more awareness of endometriosis now. When I was first diagnosed, I think in about 2011, I had never heard of the word endometriosis. I literally had to Google what I'd been diagnosed with. And I thought, well, how come 1 in 10 women have this? And I, as a woman, haven't even heard of it. If this was a men's illness, it would be page 1 in the paper every week.
100%. One of my sisters had endometriosis, and she was constantly being taken into hospital with suspected appendicitis or some mysterious illness. It was years before she actually got the diagnosis.
Yeah.
And then she did eventually go on to have children, and having the children seemed to calm down the condition. Is that something you've heard before?
Yes, absolutely. So what happens, obviously, when you get pregnant, you don't have your periods. So endometriosis is an inflammatory illness that is linked to your periods. And often it's a stress-related illness in most cases. So it's a lifestyle and it's mainly stress-related illness. So it's where we might be out of sync with our own role as a woman, but also that role as a woman that runs after everybody and looks after everyone else before we look after ourselves. Yeah. That total exhaustion often we get to, or many of us are just used to as the norm. And if there is a belief around not seeing the value of yourself as a woman, not feeling you can express yourself as a woman, not being happy with your own femininity, with motherhood often, things like that. All of those beliefs around womanhood and femininity feed into developing endometriosis or an illness in what I would call the sacral chakra area of that sort of womb space. Ovaries, bladder would fall into that as well. So yes, it takes a long time to get diagnosed. Pregnancy helps because basically you don't have periods for, certainly 9 months.
Yeah.
So the inflammation that is there that would normally get aggravated every month by yet another period, where the body can heal the inflammation from the 1 month, but then the next month the whole cycle starts again. When you get pregnant, you have a 9-month break minimum for that. And often while you're breastfeeding also, you don't have periods. So it could even be a 12, 16-month, however long you're breastfeeding, a 2-year break. If you then have another child, 2-3 years later, you could end up with a 4 or 5-year period where your body has got time to properly heal.
Yes, I understand. It's interesting because I had a similar condition called adenomyosis, and I did have a hysterectomy when I was 42. And I have to say that the condition totally controlled my life and my diary. And as I listened to your book, so much of what you experienced resonated with me because my life revolved around my cycle and this painful condition. But after I had a hysterectomy, my life started to open up and I just felt this freedom. Now, you chose to go down a very different alternative route. What made you choose that?
My mother had had a hysterectomy when she was 42. My grandmother, my mom, we all had painful periods. It was almost like when I started periods at 11. I remember my mum's first words were, "Oh, now you've got that shit too." Gave me some pads to put in my pants, and that was basically it. There was no explanation around it. So to me, the blood that was coming out of me every month was shit. Because that had been the words my mum had used. "Oh, now you've got that shit too," was literally her words. So there wasn't anything positive or what I would say today even sacred around my relationship with myself as a woman and therefore a bearer of life.
Yeah.
and a giver of life. My mum had a hysterectomy and really struggled balancing her hormones afterwards. And I think I was just because of that, I was aware that hysterectomies weren't the sort of magic solution that they were being sold as.
Yeah.
I had also looked at lots of forums and spoken to women who had had endometriosis once I was diagnosed. And for a lot of them, they had hysterectomies, and I looked at statistics as well and research papers. And the statistics and lived experiences of women seem to indicate that for quite a lot of them, and I think it's about 65%, the pain was coming back about 2-3 years after the hysterectomy.
Okay.
Because if there is endometriosis tissue elsewhere in the body, then that's not going to be solved
Yes.
by a hysterectomy. So the hysterectomy takes out the womb. Quite often we leave the ovaries in just because we do know today that the hormones are really important for thousands of other processes in the body. So removing the ovaries and therefore the hormonal link for the body brings loads of other side effects to a woman. So we're kind of just changing one problem for another. So I think that was the main reason why, well, I had an inner voice.
Yeah.
That inner voice was the top main thing. And that inner voice just kept saying there is another way.
And that makes total sense as well. But 25 years ago when I was going through it, there wasn't really the internet and there wasn't forums. And that was just the way. And I'd been told 10 years previously, you're going to need a hysterectomy. And I put it off and put it off. And for me, my condition just affected the uterus. It wasn't something outside of the uterus. So for me, looking back, I still feel it was the right thing to do. But I did manage to keep my ovaries, which was, good.
Yeah.
But I can understand exactly what you're saying, because with endometriosis, it affects lots of the area, doesn't it?
I had horrendous pain on my bowel, horrendous pain on my bladder to the point where I couldn't wee or poo, or, and so I knew my endometriosis wasn't just in my uterus. It was the inside. And my dad had stage 4 bowel cancer, so he had a stoma put in when he had his operation, and he lives with a stoma. So again, even just the slightest possibility of having to remove part of my bowel or having to live even just temporarily with a stoma, my mum having had the hysterectomy, I think they were the main reasons why I chose to go try and find a different way.
Yeah.
And there was just that voice inside my head that just kept repeating, there is another way, there is another way. And it took me years to find this other way. I tried all the holistic spectrum of treatments. Yeah. And it wasn't until I came across a research study that linked endometriosis and cancer via a cell change called the Warburg effect, that I made the link to this Budwig protocol that eventually healed me, and going to Germany and spending a month over there in one of those cancer clinics.
So you've done all the work for other ladies, which I think is incredible. And I love how your book focuses heavily on inner transformation and learning to listen to your body. I could have done with your book 25 years ago when I was going through it, but I love that you investigated the scientific ideas, like the Warburg effect. You travelled to that treatment centre in Germany. You followed the Budwig protocol. You practiced lots of holistic treatments, and you confronted your own limiting beliefs about your body and your identity. Is there one thing that you feel helped you, or was it a combination of everything that played a part in your healing?
I would say the main thing is the belief change. I had changed my diet before. So when people look at the Budwig protocol, they always look at it like you look at cancer research website or whatever, and it focuses purely on the nutritional part of the protocol. But the nutritional part of that protocol is 10%. Another 10% is detoxing the body really easily through bicarbonate soda baths and coffee enemas. And again, I've got people who've listened to podcasts that I was on and who've written back. Even just this week, I got a feedback back from someone in Germany saying, oh my God, I've started bicarbonate soda bath and my endometriosis is so much better already. So, but I would say the one thing, and that is 80% of the Budwig protocol, would be all around your belief work and learning to work out what are the stressors in my life. What stresses me? What causes me to lose my inner peace?
Yeah.
And that's where the work is to me. That's where the core work is, that self-transformation, that self-realization, that looking at yourself, keeping it all within yourself and going, okay, if I am here and I am going to heal this illness and I am here to then live a life, what do I want that life to look like? And what's stopping me?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the overall message of your book offers hope and empowerment, especially to people with chronic illnesses. Its idea is that healing is not only physical, but also mental, emotional, and even spiritual. And that exploring these unconventional paths can sometimes lead to profound change. And I love that. I love that. What did your pain teach you that nothing else could have?
I think more than anything, it taught me to look the value of my body.
Yeah.
You know, almost that idea spiritually where we say your body is your temple. And I think today I truly live almost from the understanding of I am a soul inhabiting this body, but this body is what allows me to experience life on earth. And I need a body that is functioning well because this is the temple that I have, and it harbors my soul while I'm alive.
Yes.
And I honor that body today, and I listen to it. And today, the slightest little nudge it gives me is being heard, where I will go, yes, you're feeling a bit tired. I'm going to go and lie down.
Yeah.
Which is not something I would have allowed myself in the past. It was always the go, go, go that I think our society teaches us.
Yes.
Where your value is very much in the doing rather than being. And I think when you are ill, and I'm sure or everybody who's got chronic illnesses, whose life is impacted through an illness, will agree that it really makes you value a body that works.
Yeah.
You know, when a body fully functions, and we all know that. I mean, you just cut your little finger and you realize, you know, like, oh my God, how many things do I do with that finger that I'm not aware of every day? So it's that sense of this body is amazing. To me, it's like the most sophisticated technology of life that we have on this planet. And for us to be able to use it and to find its true potential. I think so many of us, we're so far away from actually the true potential of what the body can do.
Yeah, it's constantly giving us messages, isn't it? Good
All the
messages,
time.
messages we need to listen to, that we need to react to and make changes. And there's that incredible book called The Body Keeps a Score.
Absolutely, yes.
That explains it in a book, doesn't it? It's amazing.
And the one book that for me has become my absolute Bible is Yvette Rose's book, Metaphysical Anatomy.
Yes.
Your Body is Talking, Are You Listening?
Yes, I will put these books in the link so people can check them out. It is incredible. But a lot of the time, the way society is now and our education system and the media and social media, we live in our heads too much, don't we? And a lot of us are not picking up on the messages that the body is giving us. So I think it's so important. And I love what you've shared today because it just beautifully illustrates that as well.
Can I just expand on that? When you are in pain, and you will know that from when you had adenomyosis, you stop living.
Yes.
And suddenly, and when you stop living, you stop seeing the sun in the sky and you stop seeing the utter beauty of the world. So I think the pain and the illness has also been a massive teacher in just appreciating life that you can actually live again.
Yeah.
You know, I go through every day now, and I'm just so grateful for being able to see the small things and appreciate the small things.
Yes. Yeah.
Because when you are in pain, that becomes your world, and you are trapped in that body, and you don't see the flowers anymore. You don't hear the bird song anymore. You don't see the clouds in the sky, because everything is just centered around that pain.
Yeah. And I think with any chronic illness, you know, it involves losses, doesn't it? You know, how would you describe the grief that comes with a condition like endometriosis?
I think more than anything, it was the loss of a living life fully, you know, because it just stops you. You don't... There is so much I grieve from not being able to live friendships properly because you just can't meet anyone because you're crippled on a sofa in pain. The way you connect with others around you, it stops because you're just so focused on your own suffering and your own pain. And then I lost my voice as well, so there was a time where I wasn't connected to anything in the world, seemingly.
Yeah.
And I think there is so much grief around the life that you can't live. In hindsight, there was definitely having to process grief around so many things that I could have changed had I had a different level of awareness. Like when you heal, you realize, and I think it's part of our spiritual journey anyway as a soul, to realize that everything is in us. There is no one outside of you to blame or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the way you decide to live your life. Like I was someone who was just doing from the minute I woke up in the morning to the minute I fell to bed exhausted at night. I was always there, totally like giving myself to everyone and everything, feeling I was a terrible people pleaser.
Yeah.
Always trying to make sure everybody else had their needs met.
I can relate to so much of this. Yeah.
I didn't even think about my own needs. You know, I was there living for other people and to make sure others are okay. And it's when you then forced through an illness are forced to look at your own needs, and you realize just how much you've neglected yourself. I think there was a lot of grief I had to process around that self-neglect.
And do you feel that you have processed that now and let it go, or are you holding on to any of it now that you're aware of?
I would say, so I've just recently become aware of fascia. In fact, I was working this morning with a friend who does fascia massage.
Yeah.
I think I would say I've emotionally released it. I can totally see how it was all necessary for my growth and my personal growth and my spiritual growth. It still needs to be released from the body, and that work around the fascia is definitely helping me do that right now. And I think that's a fairly recent addition to that bouquet of healing modalities that I would recommend people use. And there are thousands of ways out there. You know, I always say whatever I've used is just a handful of things that have helped me and that I subsequently trained in because they've helped me. But that's not to say that lots of other modalities out there aren't just as useful, because there are thousands of different techniques and therapies today that have all got different names but essentially are the same thing. They help us release our emotional luggage and baggage that we carry with us from childhood. And that fascia release is definitely something I'm still working on at the moment, where it's mind-boggling how the body actually holds on to it. So fascia is believed to hold trauma in the body. So whereas I'm very much, as part of my healing journey, have become aware of my energy body and of not just having a physical body, but having an energy body that holds all the emotional and spiritual pain and suffering. And we have to release from there, which I would do with like shamanic healing or with matrix re-imprinting and EFT and all those modalities, Reiki, etc., have all helped me release that from my energy body. I don't think I was quite aware until recently just how much of that was still being held in my physical body.
We're always a work in progress, aren't
Absolutely.
we?
I think when people say, will I ever be finished? I say, well, are you breathing? If you're breathing, you're not finished yet.
Exactly. It's an ongoing process, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think what changes is as you become more aware, you actually just enjoy that process. Like I love exploring new avenues and I love expanding my consciousness and expanding
more
my
opportunities
knowledge.
for growth, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So do you feel your journey to healing has brought you lots of insights and gifts?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these gifts, funny enough, I think I've had since childhood. It's just that growing up in the society most of us grew up in, they were gifts that I hid.
Yeah.
So in terms of finding my voice, which was really the journey after the endometriosis, or to me they're linked. It's the sacral chakra and the throat chakra are really linked together, and they're all about sort of that self-expression and creativity. But how do I express myself in my creativity, and am I allowing my creativity to inform how I'm living my life? What am I creating? What life am I creating? But also, how am I expressing that?
Yeah.
So to me, they're both linked. Things like when I studied shamanism, I realized that talking to plants and understanding the world as spirit and communicating in dimensions that aren't necessarily the reality most of us live in here on this earth plane was a part that's always been part of me. But I realized quite early as a child when I would talk to plants and they would talk back in my head that this is not something that was acceptable in the wider world I lived in. So I silenced that voice and it became an inner voice rather than something I would communicate outward. On my Reiki journey, I reconnected to my ability to, I suppose, connect with spirits of people who have departed, let's say.
Yeah.
So there was a whole mediumship journey that came out of wanting to find my voice that very much informs how I work today. I mean, today I think we are body, mind, and spirit. And just like in quantum physics teaches us that energy is the biggest part of reality and the physical expression is a tiny, tiny proportion of what's actually there. Yeah. And we have the scientific proofs today that that is actually the case. But of course, 20, 30, 40 years ago, people didn't see the world that way.
No.
So when you did tap into other dimensions and you saw like the spirits of the world, let's say, or had access to that information, that energy information of the world, it was something you couldn't really talk about. Didn't feel I could talk about it.
I think many of us have, well, we're all born with these gifts, but because of the way society is, and we're sort of brainwashed and manipulated to be a different way, and we can close that down. And it's not until like something happens to us, like an illness or a trauma or a tragedy or whatever, that it sort of cracks us open and we start to find it, don't we?
Absolutely. And, I can see why I needed to have the voice issue on top of the endometriosis, because I think I was always meant to write the book. Yeah. I was always meant to go and speak about the experience and share vocally those stories. And I don't think would I have done that if I hadn't still needed to hear my voice and find my voice. I don't think I would have. Yeah. It was the finding my voice bit in the end that made me step out of my comfort zone and actually go and share that story more publicly and not just heal and keep it to myself and be happy.
I think it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But what is the one thing you would like people to learn from your experience?
I think the connection between body, mind and soul.
Yeah.
And that it's our soul that wants to evolve and grow and heal.
Yeah.
And the body is almost just a reflection of what goes on in that energy of yours and in that soul level. And once you heal your soul and you align with your true purpose here on earth, and you follow your passions and you live a life that brings you joy, I think that will automatically lead to physical healing.
Yes, yeah. Now, in your book, you describe the beautiful relationship that you had with your grandmother. Can you tell us a little bit about her? Because I found this part of the book really just so heartwarming.
Yeah, and heartwarming, emotional. I've just actually been to Germany last week, and my grandmother's no longer here, but my mum and my auntie and my cousin, kind of the women of that lineage, we're still here and we're so close. And it's my grandmother's legacy that we are. My grandmother was an orphan and had the most horrendous life, like so many of her generation who lived through World War II. I think there was so much trauma that people couldn't deal with. There was no understanding of, like, the way we just accept therapy as part of what we do today just didn't exist back then. So there was so much trauma that they couldn't express, and they almost had to numb themselves emotionally to be able to even just live. And my grandmother did that. I mean, she had the most horrendous life, from being an orphan to being raped in the war to losing a child in the war. I mean, it's almost, you look at it today and you think, God, how much more can one woman have to experience, you know, and still come out of it and have so much love.
Yeah.
Like for us, particularly for me and my female cousin, I think due to the rape, she always had a disturbed relationship with men, and that translated even to the grandsons she had. But to us girls, I mean, she was just the most loving, incredible grandmother who, for me, was just peace and stillness, and I could be who I wanted to be with her. And just through working with our hands, whether that was gardening or whether it was knitting or crocheting or stitching, and I think she brought a lot of peace into a life that my parents were always arguing, and there was that sort of home wasn't necessarily always peaceful, whereas my grandmother was that safe harbor for me and my cousin, I think, for both of us.
And that really came through in the book. But I'd also like to talk about ancestral trauma, because in your book you do describe the experiences that your grandmother went through. And we know that trauma can be passed down through generations. Could you share how you feel your endometriosis may be connected to what your grandmother went through?
So I think, first of all, from a very sort of 3D perspective, a world perspective, a lot of women who suffer from endometriosis, when they look back, there often is, not always, but quite often is, similar illnesses in their lineage. So their mum might have had painful periods, like my mother had, even though in those days the word endometriosis didn't exist yet, and it didn't exist as a diagnosed illness. But my mum had a hysterectomy because of painful periods, and I'm sure, you know, anyone with endometriosis today, there is something there in that lineage going back through the ancestral patterns. So my grandmother carried a lot. I mean, and I think just generationally, looking back, most of us women will have trauma in that lineage, whether it doesn't have to be through rape, which my grandmother went through, but the suppression of women and women's powers, I think, is something that is going to be, almost every woman that lives today will have had that in her lineage, I'm sure, because we do live in a society where women's powers were taken away by patriarchy and by a society where men are in position of powers much more than women. And yes, we're bringing equilibrium to that right now, and the world is changing in that respect. But our mothers and grandmothers would have still experienced that a lot in their life. And then going shamanically, we would always go back 7 generations. And you don't need to necessarily know what happened, but it's almost like when I do healing with people, I will just set the intention of the healing, clearing 7 generations back. So even though I may not be aware of the story of my grandmother's mother or grandmother, I know there will be a sort of lineage that I come from that still affected her.
Yeah.
Like her mum died when my grandmother was 11. Her dad died when she was 3. So again, her mother would have obviously lost her husband. So there's a lot. And, being on your own as a woman, losing a husband in those days when men were often the main breadwinner, and she didn't remarry. So it would have been hard for a woman bringing up a child. And my grandmother had an older sister. So, I think her mum was actually married before but lost her husband in the First World War. So you can already see how there's trauma there that we know very little about. But that certainly had an effect on my grandmother's life.
Yeah.
Of growing up without a dad, then losing her mum quite early, growing up in a Catholic orphanage, which she hated, feeling totally disempowered as a woman because she had someone like a male guardian who was in charge of her inheritance and who basically just got rid of all the money.
Yeah.
So by the time she turned 18, she had nothing. I think she had a field and a house that was left, but all the money that was there and any other valuables had been sold, and the guardian had used it. So it's that total disempowerment, I think, of a woman is something that we need to heal right now, and bringing the power back to us women.
Yes.
In every level.
And obviously you have a strong connection to spirituality. Do you feel your health challenges played a role in deepening or shaping that part of your life? Yeah.
I think so. I kept a lot of that spiritual journey out of the endometriosis healing book, mainly because it probably wasn't such a big part of my healing journey, and I didn't want to alienate people who weren't ready for that yet.
Yeah, it's a bit deep,
I think
isn't it?
It is quite,
for some
you can
people.
you will go deeper and deeper on your self-realization journey. And I think to heal my endometriosis, it was very simple things like gratitude, like becoming aware of what stresses me and removing those triggers from my life. And they helped heal my endometriosis. The spiritual aspects, the deeper spiritual aspects of that came in after the healing of the endometriosis, if you like. So 18 months after the Budwig protocol and being in Germany, I had no symptoms, none. Like literally, I had never ever, I'd started periods at the age of 11. I had never experienced a painless period in my life. And suddenly, 18 months into the Budwig protocol, I would start bleeding, and it would literally be, I would be at the gym and it would be like, oh, I'm bleeding. Like there was no premenstrual tension or anything like that. It was just a free flow of very clear, very red, clean red blood, whereas a lot of people with endometriosis will be more familiar with sort of browny, smelly blood coming out of you that's got clots in it. So this was now a bright red, clear flow of just a period that I didn't even feel.
That's incredible.
At all.
Yeah.
So I'd reached that point through the Budwig protocol. It was probably then with the Reiki was when the messages came in, when I would treat people and suddenly I would receive messages. I don't know, they'd be like, oh, your grandmother is here, she says X, Y, Z. And the XYZ would make no sense to me whatsoever. And in the beginning, I was too scared to share that with clients. And it was only when I kind of treated friends of mine, I would say, right, I've just had this message come through. Can I just check with you if that resonates? And it always resonated. And that's when I thought, okay, I have no idea what I'm tapping into here, but there is something here that is out of my control that I'm just a channel for, but it helps the person receiving the message. So I became more confident with sharing those messages. And at some point then decided to explore that ability more and to start working more consciously with that. And I trained with a woman who does mediumship trainings and trained as a mental mediumship and dabbled in trance mediumship as well.
Okay.
So I always say mental mediumship is more, to me, like a translator where you're going, okay, there's a spirit who says something, and I perceive that either as a vision or as a message, as words that pop into my head, and I bring that through and put it into physical words that are being spoken. Trance mediumship is almost like you're just supplying your body, and the spirit enters and uses your body, and you don't really have any control over what comes through at all. Whereas on the mental mediumship, I can still decide how I'm going to put it into words.
Yeah.
Because it's almost an energetic signal that I receive, or an understanding that I receive, a download, and I put that into words. Whereas the trance mediumship is literally you supply your body, and it's almost like you're outside of your body. You're not in control of it as such. And that took a lot of work on, and even now it's not something I do like regularly or whatever. But it took a lot of work of allowing to let go of that control of things. But I do believe that through all of this, I learned to trust my own intuition a lot more, even when I work with clients. And I believe that's why I'm different to maybe like a normal psychologist or whatever, because I do work with the soul of people, and I get messages from the soul, if you like, and just bring them through, and with that you can shortcut a lot of stuff, and you get to the core of what needs to be healed, rather than working around the outer perimeter of, oh yeah, I've got work colleagues that are annoying me or whatever, and I go, no, what does your soul want in this life?
So interesting. But do you think you would have got to this place if you hadn't have gone through all that endometriosis journey?
No, because it was on the endometriosis journey, in the pain, where I first left my body, and I think that moment made me realize there is more than my physical existence. I'd already done Reiki. And I remember just sitting in a meditation one day, and I was in absolute agony and just rocking back and forth with the pain and just going to God or the universe or whatever you might think is there, is that which is greater than us, and just repeating in my head, get me out of here. I need to be out of this body. I can't bear the pain anymore. Just get me out of here. And suddenly it was like a plop, and I was above my body. It was like I was consciousness in the room. And I could look at my body that was still rocking on the floor, but I didn't feel my body anymore. So there was no pain. The pain had completely gone. And I was like, well, this is cool, So then I realized, okay, there is something here where I am a consciousness, and I don't have to necessarily be in the body to still be that consciousness.
Yeah.
So that started that whole journey.
I've also had like an out-of-body experience as well.
Go on, tell us about it.
But I wasn't in pain at the time. It's a very strange one, because I went to bed perfectly fine. I was about 17, and it was a time in my life I was very angry about life and, what was going on and different things that had happened, and I was a very happy teenager. And I woke up in the night with a dull ache in the bottom of my back, and I sort of moved to get comfortable, and then I realised the pain had gone, but I'm on the other side of the room, about a foot off the floor. I couldn't see my body, but I knew I was floating, and I could see myself in bed, and I could see my sister asleep, and the pet dog was on the end of her bed, and the pet dog could see me because it was showing its teeth at me. And I remember thinking, I need to get back in my body. I need to get back in my body. And I woke up in the morning and I knew that that wasn't a dream. And even the dog was a bit wary of me. And I told my sister, which was the worst thing to do, because every night, you're not going to go floating around the bedroom tonight, are you? So you soon learn not to tell people these things.
Absolutely.
And for a few months after that experience, I would wake up in the night with this pain in my back and I'd have to snap myself out of it because I knew it would be like the next phase I'd be out of my body. And I still, till today, don't really understand why that happened, but at the time, I've always been interested in spirituality and things outside of this world. It confirmed my belief that this physical body is just a suit for what, our higher self. And I don't know why that happened to me. But when people say they've had an out-of-body experience, I absolutely believe them. And my dad had one as well. In the war, he had malaria. And he said that he was in an isolation room and he opened his eyes and he was looking down on his body and he saw the nurse come in and wipe his brow and do the obs and things that nurses do and walk out again. And then the next thing, he was in his body. And when your dad tells you something like that, because dads don't lie, do they?
Yeah, so
there was, it happens.
Yeah.
So I
and loads of people, when you actually speak openly about this, a lot of people will suddenly go, yeah, I've had something similar that's happened. It's just that nobody talks about it.
Yes, yeah.
So most people will have had some sort of encounter that's similar. There's some great, I don't know who the author is, but there's a great guy who I think was a neurosurgeon who ended up having an out-of-body experience and then wrote a book about it.
Yes, I can't remember what it is. I'll put that in the show notes when I can think of it. Yes, it was fascinating.
And to me, because he was a scientist and this happened to him, obviously the world, since that book has listened,
doesn't it?
Has listened differently because it's not like a little Wenke from, from nowhere saying, I've had this experience. Yeah. I mean, it helped me massively on that healing journey because it's not like, it's a journey. And even with the Budvik thing, for 18 months, I'm there and I'm using my body as a guinea pig. And I believe this is the path, but it's not like your pain just disappears. But by this point, I've now learned to leave my body at will.
Yes.
And that helped massively to be able to just get yourself out of there when the pain got too bad, or when, sometimes even on that healing journey, you sometimes think, oh, I got better. And then the next month, oh my God, you've got a really bad period again and it's back, and you start doubting yourself and you start thinking, oh, what am I doing here? Am I doing the right thing? Shouldn't I be listening to my doctors, my husband, and all my friends who say, you're mad, why don't you just have a hysterectomy? So the being able to get myself out of my body and allow me to disconnect from the pain obviously helped to just keep going forward and to trust and to allow my body the time it needed to heal. I had loads of then experience, like COVID was one of those experiences where I had COVID quite early on, quite badly, was in bed for 2 weeks, literally going, not being able to breathe. And it was just exhausting to be able to have that very fast, what in yoga we would call the fluttering breath. And it was me leaving my body for almost 2 weeks that got me through it, Yeah. Because it was before the whole vaccine thing and what have you, and it was before we really knew what to do with it. So yes, I put myself on vitamin D and high vitamin C dosages and all the things that we would holistically know how to do, and oregano oil and all that stuff. But it still took 2 weeks to be able to breathe normally again. Yeah. And it's exhausting, if nothing else. So I just left my body and hovered above, and I had a lovely time. Yeah. And I knew my body just had to rest in bed and heal. And it was very weak. So that was another thing where oh my God, it was such a gift to be able to leave your body at will, if you like. Yeah. And then I had another incident recently, actually, probably about a year ago, where I fainted. And I remember my consciousness being where my head would have been and me hearing a loud bang and thinking, oh, what was that bang about? And then hearing my husband's voice calling my name and trying to communicate with me. And my consciousness was where my head would have been.
Yeah.
And was answering back to my husband, but he was clearly not hearing me. And then I realized, oh, the bang was my body that fell on the floor.
Yeah.
And then realizing that I needed to get back into that body to be able to respond.
Yes, yeah.
And almost that being a very, very conscious process of me going, oh, hang on, no, I need to get back into the body.
Yeah.
And then I was coming to. But I know while I was on the floor unconscious, I was still there.
Yeah.
Like I was still totally present, aware of everything.
I think it's incredible, that you've had these experiences and, having that one out-of-body experience that I had, it comforts me to think in terms of grief that when our physical body stops working and dies, this consciousness, this soul, this energy that we've experienced outside of the body still exists. So
Absolutely.
I know my son, Matthew, still exists on some level. So yes, I will miss him dreadfully as a human being because I can't physically hug him and smell him but I know that he exists on some level, and that brings me comfort.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, like, getting back to the hope that we started with in the beginning, again, that's another thing where I think when we open ourselves up to there being different layers of experience and different dimensions, if you want to call it that, it really helps, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Like, we've just had my brother just lost his mother-in-law, and he's got two sons who've lost their grandmother, who was a very big part of their life because she was there, and every week she would pick them up 2 days of the week from school and spend the afternoon with them. So she was very, very present in their lives. And I was there in Germany last week and went to her funeral. And afterwards I would have a chat with the boys and say, are you okay with Grandma obviously no longer being here? And they were both like, yeah, of course, we know she's not gone. And it's, and it was so beautiful because we all have that belief, like my brother is the same as me. And we would teach our kids that, yes, we have a body, we're a body, mind, and a spirit. But the spirit part of us does not actually die because energy cannot die. It's a physical law that it just changes its state. And that their grandmother is still there. And if they need to speak to her, they can. And that she will communicate in their head because she doesn't have vocal cords that can physically produce a sound, but she will telepathically communicate with them. And they might think it's just my own thoughts, but actually have a conversation with Grandma in your head.
Yeah.
And you will know that it is a two-way communication that happens. And teaching them that is actually real.
Yeah.
And that brings so much comfort. And there's no harm to be done.
No,
absolutely
not. No, I totally agree. So you're very spiritual. You have this belief about the afterlife. You get signs, you get messages. If you could give your grandmother a message now, what would you say?
It was funny because that was one of the things we did do at the 3E Center in Germany when I was at this Budwig Center. And it was the therapist I worked with at the time. I remember clearly saying, what would you want to tell your grandmother? And I remember crying, giving the therapist a hug, because she said, imagine I'm your grandmother. And all I wanted to do was give her a hug and tell her just how much I love her.
Aww.
And I think maybe that is what sums our human existence up, that in the end it is love that is everything. And to me, love heals everything. And what is it you want to say to a loved one? Forgive me and I love you?
Yeah.
If there's anything you've done where you feel guilty or whatever, you just want to say, I'm sorry and I love you. That's all there is to say, really, isn't there?
Absolutely. 100%. Oh, Wenke, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you.
We could sit and chat all day.
literally.
But if people listening want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
The best way is probably, so I've got a website, www.wenke, W-E-N-K-E, -Langhof, Langhof.com. You can follow me on Instagram, Wenke Langhof, my name. And yeah, I do have a YouTube channel. So again, Wenke Langhof on YouTube. The book is on Amazon and on Balboa Press. The audiobook, I think, is on Audible and various other platforms that you can listen to books at. So yeah,
Brilliant.
I'm out there sharing my voice.
And I will put all these links in the show notes
brilliant.
so people listening can get hold of you and find out more information. Now, I'd just like to finish by saying conversations like this remind us that grief doesn't always just show up in obvious ways. Sometimes it's felt in the body, in the life we didn't get to live, or in the gradual shifts in how we see ourselves. It can also be carried through ancestral lines, patterns passed down over time. And these subtle energies are not always easy to recognise or fully understand. Wenke, you are an inspiration, and you show that miracles do happen. And your story will give hope to other people struggling with chronic disease. And that hope is like medicine. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of A Gift for Grief. If you found it comforting, please consider subscribing to my podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. Please also leave a review because it helps others to find the show. Together we can help each other become more grief literate. To learn more about my personal journey and my 2 books on grief, visit www.louisebates.co.uk. The music on this podcast was written and recorded by my son Matthew Bates and can be found on his 2 albums, Fight Back and Kaleidoscope. And finally, if you're struggling with grief or concerned about your mental health, please reach out to your doctor. You don't have to go through this alone. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and thank you for listening.